In the vast expanse of the Galactic Federation, where 1,000 alien civilizations bow before the throne of Empress Zilara, the most advanced medical minds in the universe have declared her condition terminal. The crimson plague that courses through her veins has defeated Altarian quantum healers, Vexian bioengineers, and even the legendary Zephyrian lifeweavers. Every species that has ever claimed mastery over disease and death has tried and failed. But there's one species that hasn't been consulted yet. One species that the galaxy considers primitive, violent, and utterly unremarkable. A species that most aliens believe has nothing to offer but crude weapons and reckless bravery. They're about to discover just how wrong they are about humanity. When retired human veteran Marcus Chen receives an impossible summons to the Imperial Palace, he has no idea that his scarred hands and battle-worn body carry the key to saving not just an empress, but the very fabric of galactic civilization itself. Because sometimes, what the universe needs isn't the most advanced technology or the most elegant solution. Sometimes it needs human blood. Marcus Chen wiped the sweat from his forehead as he finished welding the final joint on the water purification system. The settlement on Kepler 442b was small, barely 300 souls, but they needed clean water just as much as any metropolis. At 62, his hands weren't as steady as they used to be, but decades of military engineering had taught him that precision mattered more than speed. The twin suns of the Kepler system cast long shadows across the prefabricated buildings that made up New Harmony. It wasn't much to look at, but Marcus had helped build half of these structures with his own hands after retiring from the Terran Defense Force. After 30 years of fighting in wars that most people back on Earth never even heard about, this quiet life of fixing generators and installing plumbing felt like paradise. A low hum filled the air, and Marcus looked up to see a ship descending through the atmosphere, not one of the regular supply vessels either. This one was sleek, silver, and far too expensive-looking for their little colony. As it settled onto the landing pad with barely a whisper, Marcus recognized the design. Altarian diplomatic vessel. His blood ran cold. The last time he'd seen an Altarian ship, half his squad had died on the moon of Rigel 7, fighting off pirates while the Altarians sat safely in orbit, claiming their prime directive prevented them from interfering in human conflicts. Marcus spat in the dust and turned back to his work. But the approaching footsteps on gravel made him pause. Marcus Chen, formerly Staff Sergeant, Terran Defense Force, 47th Engineering Battalion. The voice was melodic, like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Altarians always sounded like that, even when they were delivering death sentences. Marcus turned around slowly. The Altarian stood about 7 feet tall, with pale blue skin that seemed to shimmer in the double sunlight. She wore robes of deep purple trimmed with silver, and her large, dark eyes held an expression if he didn't know better. Altarians were incapable of genuine emotion, or so the xenobiologist claimed. "That's former Staff Sergeant Chen to you," Marcus replied, setting down his welding torch. "What do you want?" "My name is Lyriel of the 3rd Diplomatic Caste. I come bearing a request from the Imperial Council of the Galactic Federation." Marcus snorted. "The Federation? Let me guess, another one of their member species is having trouble with pirates and suddenly they remember that humans exist." Lyriel's expression didn't change, but something flickered in those dark eyes. "The Empress is dying." The words hung in the air like a physical weight. Marcus had heard of Empress Zilara, of course. Everyone in the galaxy had. She was the Zilithian ruler who had united over 1,000 species under the banner of the Federation, ending wars that had raged for millennia. Under her rule, the galaxy had experienced an unprecedented era of peace and prosperity. "I'm sorry to hear that," Marcus said carefully, "but I'm not sure what that has to do with me. Our greatest medical minds have exhausted all known treatments. The quantum healers of Altair, the bioengineers of X Prime, even the legendary lifeweavers of Zephyr 7 have declared her condition beyond their abilities." Marcus frowned. He'd heard of the Crimson Plague during his military service. It was a nasty piece of work, a bioweapon developed during the sector wars that attacked the nervous system. Most species had developed treatments for it decades ago. "Again, I'm not a doctor. I fix pipes and generators. You are also a survivor of the Battle of Proxima Station." Marcus felt his jaw tighten. Proxima Station wasn't something he liked to remember. 3 days of hell, trapped on a research station with 40 other humans while Krillian death squads hunted them through the corridors. By the time the rescue ships arrived, only 12 of them were left alive. What does that have to do with anything? Records show that you were infected with the Crimson Plague during that battle. You should have died within hours. Instead, you not only survived, but you continued fighting for 2 more days before medical assistance arrived. Marcus touched the scar on his neck unconsciously. The memory of those burning fever dreams, The way his vision had tunneled down to nothing but the next target, the next corridor to defend, came flooding back. He'd been so sick he could barely stand, but something had kept him going. I got lucky. Good immune system. No. Lyriel stepped closer, and Marcus caught a scent like ozone and starlight. We have studied the medical records. Your blood developed antibodies that no other known species has ever produced. Antibodies that completely neutralize the plague. So use my blood to make a cure. We tried. 20 years ago, when the medical data was first analyzed, Altarian scientists attempted to synthesize the antibodies. They failed. Vexian bioengineers tried to replicate them artificially. They failed. Every attempt to create a synthetic version has resulted in failure. Marcus was beginning to understand where this was going, and he didn't like it. You want my blood. Literally. The Empress has perhaps days to live. A direct transfusion is the only remaining option. Why should I care? The words came out harsher than Marcus intended, but 20 years of resentment made them bitter. Where was the Federation when humans were fighting for survival? Where was your precious Empress when entire colonies were being wiped out? The Prime Directive. Don't give me that Prime Directive nonsense. Marcus turned away and picked up his tools. The Federation only cares about humans when they need something. The answer is no, please. The word was soft, almost whispered. Without the Empress, the Federation will collapse. The peace that has lasted for 3 centuries will shatter. Billions will die in the wars that follow. Marcus paused, his hand on the toolkit. He'd seen war up close, had breathed the smoke of burning cities, and held dying friends in his arms. The idea of that carnage spreading across the galaxy made his stomach turn. But he'd also seen how quickly the so-called civilized species abandoned their principles when things got difficult. Get someone else. There is no one else. The medical records from Proxima Station show that you are the only survivor who developed complete immunity. The other 11 survivors either died from unrelated causes or never developed the necessary antibodies. Sarah Martinez, who'd held the North Corridor for 6 hours with a broken arm. Tommy Liu, who died 3 years later in a shuttle accident. Elena Rodriguez, who'd been killed by pirates 5 years back. All of them gone, leaving him as the only one who could help. What's in it for humanity? He asked finally. I don't understand. Marcus turned back to face the Altarian diplomat. I'm not doing this out of the goodness of my heart. If my blood saves your Empress, what does humanity get in return? Lyriel hesitated. The continued stability of the galaxy benefits all species. Not good enough. I want guarantees. Full Federation membership for humanity. No more of this junior partner status. No more Prime Directive keeping Federation forces from helping human colonies under attack. Full membership with all the rights and protections that entails. I cannot make such promises. The Federation Council, then find someone who can. Marcus picked up his welding torch and ignited it. Because without guarantees, you can watch your Empress die. The silence stretched between them, broken only by the hiss of the torch. Finally, Lyriel spoke again. I will need to consult with the Imperial Council. You do that, I'll be here when you get back. As the Altarian walked away, Marcus tried to focus on his work, but his hands were shaking. He kept thinking about Elena Rodriguez, who'd saved his life on Proxima Station by pulling him into a maintenance shaft when the Krillian kill squad rounded the corner. She died alone on some godforsaken asteroid, fighting pirates who should have been stopped by Federation peacekeepers. The Altarian ship lifted off in a whisper of displaced air, leaving Marcus alone with his thoughts and the twin suns beating down on his shoulders. Part of him hoped they wouldn't come back. Life was simpler when the galaxy's problems weren't his to solve. But deep down, he knew they would return. They were desperate, and desperation made people do things they'd never normally consider. The question was whether they were desperate enough to give humanity what it deserved. 3 days later, as Marcus was installing a new atmospheric processor in the colony's greenhouse, the Altarian ship returned. This time, it wasn't alone. A massive Zilithian dreadnought hung in orbit like a steel moon, and smaller escort vessels formed a protective perimeter around the colony. Lyriel emerged from the diplomatic vessel, but she wasn't alone. A figure in power armor stepped out beside her, helmet tucked under one arm. The armor bore the insignia of the Imperial Guard, and Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. The Imperial Guard didn't leave the Empress's side unless something was very, very wrong. Marcus-chan, Lyriel called as she approached. I bring word from the Imperial Council. Marcus set down his tools and walked over to meet them. The Imperial Guard was a Zalithian male, probably 8 feet tall and built like a fortress. Scars crisscrossed his face, and his eyes held the cold calculation of a professional warrior. Marcus recognized the look. He'd worn it himself, once upon a time. "This is Commander Thane of the Imperial Guard," Lyriel said. "He speaks with the Empress's own voice." Thane stepped forward and extended a hand. When Marcus shook it, the grip was firm but not crushing, a sign of respect between warriors. "Staff Sergeant Chen," Thane said, his voice a low rumble. "Her Imperial Majesty has authorized me to accept your terms." Marcus blinked. "All of them? Full Federation membership for humanity? Full military protection for all human colonies? Voting rights in the Federation Council proportional to your species' population?" And Thane paused, as if the next words were difficult to say. "A formal apology from the Federation for the policy of non-interference that has cost so many human lives." Marcus felt his knees go weak. Full membership. After decades of being treated as second-class citizens in their own galaxy, humanity would finally have a voice that mattered. "There is one condition," Thane continued. "You must come immediately. The Empress has hours, not days." Marcus looked around at the colony he'd helped build, at the simple life he'd carved out for himself. Then he thought about all the human colonies that had fallen while the Federation watched from orbit, citing their precious prime directive. "Give me 10 minutes to pack." The journey to the Imperial Palace took 18 hours, even with the Dreadnought's advanced hyperdrive systems. Marcus spent most of the time in the medical bay, getting poked and prodded by a team of doctors who seemed to regard his blood like a holy relic. They explained that the Crimson Plague had mutated since the Proxima Station incident, becoming even more virulent and resistant to treatment. "The Empress contracted it 3 weeks ago," Dr. Veleth, the chief medical officer, explained as he drew another vial of Marcus's blood for analysis. The Zellerian's tentacles moved with practiced precision as he worked. "We believe it was introduced deliberately by agents of the hegemony." Marcus frowned. "I thought the hegemony was destroyed decades ago. The main fleet was scattered, but remnant cells have been operating throughout the Outer Rim. They see the Empress's death as an opportunity to throw the galaxy into chaos." "And they might be right," Commander Thane added from the doorway. "Already, 3 member species have begun mobilizing their fleets, claiming they're preparing for defensive actions. The Korvaxi have seized 2 neutral systems, and the Thalarian Empire is massing ships along the vegan border." Marcus winced as Dr. Repamond Veleth inserted another needle. "How bad is it really?" "The Empress's condition, I mean." The doctor's tentacles drooped. "Without treatment, she will be dead within 6 hours. The plague has damaged her nervous system extensively. Even if your blood neutralizes the infection, there may be permanent damage. But she'll live? If the transfusion works, yes, but there are risks. Cross-species blood transfusions are dangerous under the best circumstances. The Empress's physiology is significantly different from yours." Marcus had seen plenty of Zalithians during his military service. They were humanoid but taller and more slender, with pale green skin and silver hair. More importantly, they had 2 hearts and a completely different circulatory system. "What are the odds?" Veleth was quiet for a long moment. 60% chance of success, 20% chance of partial success with permanent disability, 20% chance of death, and without the transfusion, 100% chance of death. Marcus nodded grimly. Those weren't great odds, but he'd faced worse. At least this time he might actually save someone instead of just watching them die. The Imperial Palace was visible from orbit, a crystalline structure that sprawled across an entire continent. As their shuttle descended through the atmosphere, Marcus could see gardens that stretched for hundreds of miles, dotted with lakes that reflected the light of the system's blue star. It was beautiful in a way that took his breath away, but also impossibly vast and alien. "The Empress has ruled for over 3 centuries, Commander Thane explained, as they walked through corridors lined with artwork from 1,000 worlds. "She unified the galaxy through diplomacy when others would have chosen war. Many species owe their very survival to her wisdom." Marcus nodded, trying not to gawk at the alien artwork and architecture around him. Everything was designed on a scale that dwarfed human sensibilities, but there was also an elegance to it that spoke of refined aesthetic sense. They finally arrived at the Imperial Medical Center, a complex of white buildings that gleamed like pearls in the afternoon light. Dr. Veleth had contacted his colleagues during the journey, and a full surgical team was waiting for them. "The Empress is in the isolation ward," Dr. Veleth explained as they walked through the sterile corridors. "The plague is highly contagious, so we'll need to take precautions." Marcus was fitted with the environmental suit that covered him from head to toe. The technology was far more advanced than anything human medicine had produced, but the basic principle was the same: keep the germs out. When they finally entered the isolation chamber, Marcus felt his breath catch in his throat. Empress Ilara lay on a medical bed that seemed to float in the center of the room, surrounded by monitoring equipment that hummed softly. She was beautiful in the ethereal way of all Zilithians, but the crimson plague had left its mark. Her pale green skin had taken on a grayish tinge, and the silver hair that should have shone like moonlight was dull and lifeless. "Your Imperial Majesty," Dr. Veleth said softly, "I present Marcus Chen of Earth." The Empress's eyes opened, and Marcus was surprised by their clarity. Despite her illness, her gaze was sharp and intelligent. When she spoke, her voice was weak but steady. "Marcus Chen, I have read your military record. You have served the galaxy with honor, even when the galaxy failed to serve you." Marcus wasn't sure how to respond to that. "Just doing my duty, Your Majesty." A faint smile crossed her lips. "Even now, you show the humility that makes your species remarkable." Dr. Calder wrote, "Veleth tells me that your blood may save my life." "We hope so, ma'am. And if I die during the procedure?" Marcus met her gaze steadily. "Then at least we tried. Sometimes that's all you can do." The Empress nodded slowly. "A soldier's answer." "Very well, Marcus Chen. Let us see if human blood can save a Zilithian life." As the medical team began their preparations, Marcus caught a glimpse of the monitoring station, where several figures in expensive robes were watching. The Federation Council, he realized. They were all here, watching to see if a retired human engineer could save their leader. No pressure at all. The preparation for the transfusion took 3 hours. Marcus sat in a medical chair that had been adjusted for human proportions, watching as Dr. Veleth and his team ran final diagnostics on equipment that looked like it belonged in a science fiction movie. Holographic displays showed the molecular structure of his blood, with the unique antibodies highlighted in blue. "The antibodies are definitely present, Dr. Experience." Veleth reported to the assembled council members. "Concentration is actually higher than it was 20 years ago. It appears that Staff Sergeant Chen's immune system has continued to refine its response to the plague." Marcus touched the scar on his neck again. "Does that mean something?" "It means your body remembers the infection and has been preparing for it ever since," replied Dr. Kesseth, a Vexian specialist whose insectoid features were hidden behind a surgical mask. "Your immune system treats the Crimson Plague as a permanent threat." "Lucky me," Marcus muttered. Commander Thine approached his chair. The big Zilithian looked uncomfortable in his sterile medical garb, like a warrior forced to play doctor. "Staff Sergeant, there's something you should know. Intelligence reports suggest that hegemony agents may attempt to disrupt the procedure." Marcus felt his combat instincts sharpen. "Here?" "In the palace, the hegemony has sleeper agents throughout the galaxy. Some have been in place for decades. We've increased security, but the palace is vast, and there are many ways to infiltrate the medical center." "What kind of disruption are we talking about?" "They don't want the Empress to recover. If they can't kill her directly, they might try to sabotage the transfusion equipment or eliminate you." Marcus nodded. He'd expected something like this. In his experience, whenever something was important enough to save the galaxy, someone always tried to stop it from happening. "I'll be ready." Dr. Veleth returned with a device that looked like a combination IV stand and computer terminal. "This is the transfusion apparatus. It will filter your blood, concentrate the antibodies, and adjust the cellular composition to be compatible with Zilithian physiology." "How long will the procedure take?" 6 to 8 hours for the full transfusion. "We'll need to monitor both you and the Empress continuously. Any sign of rejection or adverse reaction, and we'll have to stop immediately." Marcus settled back in the chair as Dr. Veleth attached the monitoring equipment. Through the transparent aluminum window, he could see Empress Solara being prepared for the procedure. She looked so fragile, almost ethereal, but there was still strength in the way she held herself. "She's tougher than she looks," Commander Thane said, following his gaze. "I've served under her command for 40 years. I've seen her make decisions that saved billions of lives, and I've watched her carry the weight of those choices without complaint. Must be hard, ruling 1,000 different species."
"Harder than you can imagine."
"Every decision affects millions of worlds. Every law must account for the needs and customs of species that evolved on completely different types of planets. The Empress once told me that the hardest part wasn't making the big decisions, but living with the consequences." Marcus felt the familiar sensation of blood being drawn, but the alien technology made the process smoother than any human medical equipment he'd experienced. Through the monitors, he could see his blood being processed, the antibodies separated and concentrated. "First phase complete," Dr. Veleth announced. "Beginning cellular modification." Marcus watched in fascination as his blood was transformed at the molecular level. The red color shifted to a pale greenish hue that would be compatible with Zalithian physiology. It was like watching science fiction become reality. That's when the lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in immediately, bathing the medical center in a red glow. Alarm klaxons began wailing, and Marcus could hear the sound of running feet in the corridors outside. "Security breach in Sector 7, a voice announced over the intercom. "All medical personnel maintain positions. Security teams respond immediately." "Just 2 victims pulling a sidearm from somewhere in his medical garb. Doctor, how long until we can disconnect Staff Sergeant Chen?" "At least 20 minutes to safely shut down the system. If we stop now, we'll lose the processed blood and have to start over." "We don't have 20 minutes, Thane said grimly. The door to the medical suite burst open, and 3 figures in dark combat armor rushed in. Marcus recognized the design immediately. Hegemony death squads. He'd fought their kind before. During the sector wars, they were fast, ruthless, and completely without mercy. The first attacker went for Dr. Furman, Valeth, raising a weapon that crackled with blue energy. Commander Thani intercepted him, moving with surprising speed for such a large being. The 2 combatants went down in a tangle of limbs, wrestling for control of the weapon. The second attacker headed straight for Marcus, but found his path blocked by Dr. Kesseth. The Vexian doctor might not have been a warrior, but his species had natural armor and reflexes that served him well. His forearms grappled with the assassin, trying to keep the energy weapon pointed away from the transfusion equipment. The third attacker made it to Marcus's chair before being tackled by one of the medical technicians. They rolled across the floor, knocking over equipment and sending diagnostic displays crashing to the ground. Marcus tried to get up, but the transfusion equipment was still connected to his arm. He was effectively trapped in the chair, watching the battle unfold around him while his blood continued to flow through the processing system. "How much longer?" he called to Dr. Belith, who was huddled behind an overturned table.
15 minutes?
"We need 15 more minutes." Commander Thane managed to disarm his opponent and put him down with a blow that would have killed a human. The big Zalithian was bleeding from a cut on his forehead, but he was already moving to help Dr. Enon, Kesseth. The Vexian doctor was not faring as well. His natural armor had protected him from the worst of the energy weapon's discharge, but he was clearly weakening. Just as the assassin was about to break free from his grip, Thane arrived and ended the fight with brutal efficiency. That left the third attacker, who had managed to overpower the medical technician and was now advancing on Marcus with murder in his eyes. The human veteran could see the hatred burning in the alien's features through the transparent faceplate of his helmet. "You should have stayed on your little colony, human," the assassin snarled. "The galaxy doesn't need your kind interfering in affairs that are beyond your understanding."
Marcus smiled grimly.
"You know what your problem is?" The assassin paused, perhaps expecting some final words or a plea for mercy. "You forgot that I'm not just a blood donor. I'm a soldier." Marcus grabbed the IV stand with his free hand and swung it like a club. The heavy medical equipment caught the assassin in the side of the head, sending him staggering. Before the alien could recover, Marcus followed up with a kick that would have made his old drill sergeant proud. The assassin went down hard, his weapon skittering across the floor. Commander Thane appeared a moment later and secured the unconscious figure with restraints that looked like they could hold a rampaging rhinoceros. "Sector 7 is secure," the intercom announced. "Medical teams report to stations. All clear." Dr. Belethik emerged from behind his makeshift cover, checking the diagnostic equipment with practiced efficiency. "Transfusion system is undamaged. We can continue the procedure." Marcus settled back in his chair, adrenaline still coursing through his veins. "How's the Empress?" Through the window, he could see that Empress Solara had remained calm throughout the entire attack. She lay still on her medical bed, watching the activity around her with alert eyes. When she saw him looking, she raised one hand in a small salute. "She's stable, Doctor," Veleth reported. Remarkably, her vital signs actually improved during the excitement. "I think the prospect of surviving has given her something to fight for." The rest of the transfusion proceeded without incident. Marcus watched the monitors as his processed blood flowed into the Empress's circulatory system. The alien technology tracked every cell, every antibody, showing in real time as his immune system's response began to take effect in her body. "Antibody levels are rising," Dr. Kesseth reported, his voice tight with excitement. "The Crimson Plague markers are beginning to decrease. Vital signs are stabilizing," another technician added. "Neural activity is returning to normal parameters." Marcus felt a strange sense of connection to the Empress as his blood flowed into her veins. Somewhere in that alien body, his cells were fighting a battle that had started 20 years ago on a space station in the Proxima system. The antibodies that had kept him alive during those hellish 3 days were now working to save the leader of the galaxy. "How are you feeling, Staff Sergeant?" Dr. Veleth asked. Marcus took inventory. He was tired, which was normal after giving blood, but otherwise fine. "I've felt worse." "How much longer?" "For the full transfusion, then another hour for observation. We want to make sure the Empress's system accepts the treatment fully." Through the window, Marcus could see that the Empress's color was already improving. The grayish tinge was fading from her skin, and her silver hair seemed to be regaining some of its natural luster. More importantly, she was moving more naturally, as if the neural damage from the plague was beginning to reverse itself. Commander Thani appeared at his side, medical bandages covering the cut on his forehead. "The hegemony agents have been captured." Under interrogation, they revealed the location of 3 more sleeper cells. "Security teams are moving to neutralize them now." "Will there be more attacks?" "Possibly." The hegemony has had decades to infiltrate Federation systems, but the palace is now on full alert, and the Imperial Guard has been activated. Nothing else will get through our defenses. Marcus nodded, then had a troubling thought. What happens after the Empress recovers? The hegemony isn't going to give up just because this attack failed. Thane's expression was grim. "That's something the Federation Council will have to address. But first, we need to make sure the treatment works." As if summoned by his words, Dr. Veleth appeared with a datapad full of medical readings. His tentacles were practically vibrating with excitement. "The antibodies are working perfectly," he announced. "Plague markers have decreased by 70% in the last hour. Neural function is returning to baseline levels." "It's working, Staff Sergeant. It's actually working." Marcus felt a wave of relief wash over him. For the first time since this whole ordeal began, he allowed himself to hope that everything might actually turn out all right. What about long-term effects? Too early to tell for certain, but the preliminary indicators are excellent. The Empress should make a full recovery, with no permanent damage from the plague. Through the observation window, Marcus could see members of the Federation Council watching the proceedings with obvious relief. Representatives from dozens of species stood together, their differences temporarily set aside by the common hope that their leader would survive. "They really do depend on her, don't they?" Marcus observed. "More than you know," Commander Thane replied. "The Empress isn't just a ruler. She's a symbol of unity, a reminder that different species can work together instead of destroying each other. Without her, old rivalries and territorial disputes would tear the Federation apart within months." Marcus thought about the human colonies that had been left to fend for themselves while the Federation remained neutral in their conflicts. Maybe that wouldn't be such a bad thing. Some of the member species might learn to stand on their own. "You've seen war, Staff Sergeant. You know what it costs." The galaxy was tearing itself apart before the Empress united it. Billions died in conflicts that accomplished nothing but mutual destruction. And now billions more are dying because the Federation won't act to protect its weaker members. "The Prime Directive is an excuse for cowardice," Marcus interrupted. "Don't get me wrong, I understand the logic. Interfere too much, and you become responsible for everything that goes wrong. But stand back too far, and you become complicit in everything that goes wrong anyway." Commander Thane was quiet for a long moment. Finally, he spoke. "The Empress has been reconsidering the Prime Directive. Your species situation has been educational. She's come to realize that neutrality can be its own form of cruelty. Is that why she agreed to full Federation membership for humanity? Guilt? But also because she's learned to recognize courage. Your people have been fighting alone for decades, and you've never stopped trying to protect those who can't protect themselves. That's something the galaxy needs more of." The transfusion continued for another hour, with Marcus watching the steady improvement in the Empress's condition. Her movements became more coordinated, her breathing steadier, and the monitors showed steady improvement in every measurable parameter. "Final phase beginning," Dr. Pauls Beleth announced. "We're now cycling her system to ensure complete integration of the antibodies." Marcus felt the flow of blood reverse as the machinery began to return his own processed blood to his system. It was a strange sensation, like getting back something that was somehow different than what he'd given up. "Will I still be immune to the plague?" he asked. "More immune than before, actually, Doctor," Keseth replied. "The processing has concentrated your natural antibodies. You could probably survive a direct injection of pure plague culture at this point. Let's not test that theory." 20 minutes later, Dr. Beleth announced that the procedure was complete. Marcus felt the IV needle withdrawn from his arm, leaving behind only a small bandage and a sense of profound tiredness. "How do you feel, Staff Sergeant?" Marcus stretched carefully, working out the kinks from sitting in the medical chair for so long. "Like I just donated a few pints of blood to save the galaxy. Not bad for a day's work." Through the observation window, he could see Empress Xylara sitting up on her medical bed. Her color had returned to a healthy pale green, and her silver hair shone with its natural luster. More importantly, she was smiling. She turned toward the window and met his eyes. Then, slowly and deliberately, she pressed her hand against the transparent aluminum and mouthed 2 words, "Thank you." Marcus placed his own hand against the window, matching her gesture. Somewhere in the background, he could hear members of the Federation Council celebrating, but all his attention was focused on the alien woman whose life he had just saved. For the first time in 20 years, Marcus Chen felt like his blood had been spilled for something that truly mattered. 3 days after the transfusion, Marcus found himself in a situation he'd never imagined, having breakfast with the Empress of the Galaxy. The private dining chamber in the Imperial Palace was smaller than he'd expected, with large windows that overlooked gardens filled with flowers from 100 different worlds. Empress Xylara sat across from him, looking completely recovered and somehow more vibrant than before her illness. "The doctors tell me that your antibodies have integrated perfectly with my immune system," she said, cutting into what appeared to be fruit from her homeworld. "They estimate that I now have the same immunity to the Crimson Plague that you developed at Proxima Station." Marcus sipped his coffee, which was remarkably similar to the Earth variety despite being grown on a planet 300 light-years away. "I'm glad it worked, Your Majesty. For a while there, I wasn't sure either of us would make it through the procedure. Please call me Xylara. After sharing blood, I think we can dispense with excessive formality." She paused, studying his face. "Tell me about Proxima Station." "The official reports mention a heroic defense, but I sense there's more to the story." Marcus set down his coffee cup, memories flooding back. It wasn't heroic. It was desperate. 41 humans trapped in a research facility while Krillian death squads hunted us through the corridors. We had maybe 10 working weapons between us and enough ammunition for a few hours of fighting. But you held for 3 days. We got lucky. The station's automated systems were still functioning, so we could control doors and life support. Elena Rodriguez figured out how to vent atmosphere from sections where the Krillians were advancing. Tommy Liu rigged explosive charges from mining equipment. We improvised. Xylara leaned forward, genuinely interested. "And the plague?"
Marcus touched the scar on his neck.
"Third day, one of the Krillians got close enough to hit me with a biodart. Crimson Plague, concentrated dose. I should have been dead in hours, but the symptoms just made me angry instead of killing me. Ended up using that anger to hold the central hub for 6 more hours until the rescue ships arrived." "Anger sustained you? Anger at being abandoned? Anger at watching my friends die? Anger at a galaxy that seemed determined to ignore human suffering." Marcus met her eyes. "That anger has been with me for 20 years, Your Majesty. Until 3 days ago, I wasn't sure it would ever go away." Xylara nodded slowly. "I understand. The Federation's policy of non-interference has caused immeasurable suffering, often to the very people we claim to protect. It's a lesson I've been slow to learn." Before Marcus could respond, Commander Thane entered the dining chamber. The big Zalithian looked troubled, his usual composed demeanor cracked by whatever news he carried. "Your Majesty, we have a situation developing. The Korvaxi Dominion has seized the Altair system and is demanding that the Federation recognize their territorial claim."
Xylara's expression hardened.
"On what grounds?" "They claim that the Federation's weakness, demonstrated by your recent illness, proves that the current government is unfit to maintain galactic stability. They're calling for a new order, with stronger species taking control of strategic systems." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. "They're testing you, seeing if you're strong enough to respond." "Indeed," Xylara said grimly, "and the Thalarian Empire has mobilized 3 battle fleets, ostensibly for defensive purposes. Intelligence suggests they're preparing to move on the vegan border worlds." "What about the other member species?" Marcus asked. Thane consulted his datapad. "Mixed reactions. The Altarians are calling for diplomatic solutions, as usual. The Vexians want immediate military intervention. The smaller species are mostly scared and looking to see which way the wind blows." Xylara stood and walked to the window, gazing out at the peaceful gardens. 20 years ago, I could have ended this with a single transmission. The threat of Imperial intervention would have been enough to make the aggressors back down. "What's different now?" Marcus asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. "They know I was dying. They know how close the Federation came to collapse. Even though I've recovered, they question whether the old order can survive. She turned back to face them. They're not entirely wrong. The Federation has grown complacent, relying too heavily on the myth of my invincibility. Commander Thane stepped forward. Your Majesty, the Imperial fleet stands ready to respond to any aggression. We can have a battle group at Altair within 24 hours. And then what? We destroy the Korvoxy fleet, occupy their worlds, and prove that we rule through fear rather than consent. Zilara shook her head. That would make us no better than the old warlords who dominated the galaxy before the Federation. Marcus had been listening to the exchange with growing frustration. With respect, Your Majesty, sometimes fear is the only thing that stops a bully. I've seen what happens when good people refuse to fight back against aggressors. You're suggesting military intervention? I'm suggesting that you make it clear there are consequences for breaking the peace. The Korvaxi and Thalarians are counting on Federation restraint to protect them while they grab what they can. Zalara studied him with those intelligent eyes. And if military action leads to a wider war, then you fight that war now while you choose the terms, instead of later when your enemies have had time to prepare and gather allies. Staff Sergeant, the Empress has spent 3 centuries avoiding such conflicts through diplomacy. And diplomacy is great when everyone involved is acting in good faith, Marcus replied. But what happens when one side decides that the other side's unwillingness to fight makes them weak? Zilara was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the gardens where flowers from peaceful worlds bloomed in careful harmony. When she spoke, her voice was thoughtful. You know, Marcus, there's something I've been meaning to ask you. When you agreed to help save my life, you demanded full Federation membership for humanity. But you could have asked for anything. Wealth, power, your own system to rule. Why membership? Bikes considered the question carefully. Because I've seen what happens to species that have to stand alone. Humanity has been fighting for survival for decades, watching colonies get wiped out by pirates and raiders, while the Federation stayed neutral. We needed the protection that comes with belonging to something bigger than ourselves. Protection, not privilege or status.
That's right.
We just wanted to know that when the next Proxima station happens, someone will come to help. Zylara nodded slowly. And that's exactly why your people deserve that membership. You understand that true strength comes from standing together, not from standing over others. She walked back to the table and activated a holographic communicator. A 3-dimensional image of the Federation Council chamber appeared, showing representatives from dozens of species in heated debate. Council members, Zilara said, her voice carrying easily over the arguments. I call for an immediate vote on Resolution 2847. The chamber fell silent. Marcus could see the confusion on alien faces as they tried to remember what Resolution 2847 contained. Resolution 2847, submitted 2 years ago by the Altarian delegation, Zilara continued, calls for the establishment of rapid response fleets to provide immediate assistance to member species under attack, superseding Prime Directive restrictions in cases of unprovoked aggression. This was exactly what humanity had been asking for, what they'd been denied repeatedly by the Federation Council. Your Majesty, the Altarian representative said carefully, this resolution was tabled indefinitely due to concerns about military overreach. Recent events have demonstrated that our policy of non-interference can be perceived as weakness by those who would threaten galactic stability. The vote will proceed immediately. The debate that followed was intense but brief. The recent hegemony attack and the Korvaxi aggression had shaken many council members, making them more receptive to the idea of active defense. When the vote came, Resolution 2847 passed by a significant margin. Commander Thane, Zilara said as the council session ended, prepare the Third Fleet for immediate deployment to the Altair system. Rules of engagement are to secure the system and escort any Korvaxi vessels back to their own space. What if they resist? Then they learn that Federation membership comes with responsibilities as well as privileges. Zylara's expression was steel wrapped in silk. And send a message to the Thalarian Empire. Any movement beyond their current borders will be considered an act of aggression against the Federation. As Thani left to carry out his orders, Marcus found himself alone with the Empress again. She looked tired but determined, like someone who had just made a decision that would reshape the galaxy.
You realize what you just did?
He asked.
I ended the Federation's policy of neutrality in the face of aggression.
It's something I should have done decades ago. She turned to face him. Your blood didn't just save my life, Marcus. It reminded me what courage looks like. I'm not sure I follow. You came here knowing that the procedure might kill you, because you believed it was the right thing to do. Not because you had to, not because someone ordered you to, but because innocent people would die if you didn't act. She smiled sadly. I had forgotten what that kind of moral courage looked like. Marcus felt uncomfortable with the praise. I'm not a hero, Your Majesty. I'm just a guy who's seen too many good people die because no one was willing to help them.
That's exactly what makes you a hero.
The galaxy is full of beings who could help but choose not to. It's rare to find someone who helps simply because help is needed. Before Marcus could respond, an aide rushed into the chamber carrying an urgent message. Zylara read it quickly, her expression growing more serious with each line. What is it? Marcus asked. The Korvaxi have responded to our fleet deployment by attacking a civilian transport in the Altair system. 43 dead, including 15 humans from a survey team. Marcus felt the familiar anger building in his chest. Those weren't military targets. No, they were innocents. The Korvaxi are sending a message that they won't be intimidated by Federation military action. Zylara crumpled the message in her hand. They've made a grave mistake. What do you mean?
They just killed Federation citizens under my protection.
That's not aggression or territorial dispute. That's murder. Activated her communicator again. Commander Thane, you are authorized to use any force necessary to secure the Altair system and apprehend those responsible for the attack on the civilian transport. What about survivors? Rescue operations are your first priority. But make it clear to the Korvaxi that attacks on civilians will not be tolerated. As the communication ended, Marcus saw something in Zalara's eyes that reminded him of his own reflection after Proxima Station. The look of someone who had been pushed too far and was finally ready to push back. The old Empress would have demanded apologies and reparations, she said quietly. The old Empress would have tried to find a diplomatic solution that satisfied everyone. And now I remember that sometimes the only language bullies understand is force. She looked at Marcus with something that might have been gratitude. Thank you for reminding me of that lesson. Over the next several hours, reports flowed in from the Altair system. The Third Fleet had arrived to find the Korvaxi forces in full retreat, leaving behind the wreckage of the civilian transport and 37 survivors who had managed to reach escape pods. The rescue operation was successful, but the damage was done. More importantly, news of the Federation's rapid and decisive response spread quickly throughout the galaxy. The Thalarian Empire suddenly discovered urgent reasons to recall their border fleets for maintenance and training exercises. 3 other minor powers that had been making territorial noises quietly withdrew their claims and requested meetings to clarify their positions within Federation space. It's working, Commander Thon reported during the evening briefing. The show of force has convinced most potential aggressors to reconsider their positions. Intelligence suggests that even the remaining hegemony cells are going to ground rather than risk provoking further military response. Zylara nodded, studying the tactical displays that showed Federation fleets deploying throughout the galaxy. Good, but this is only the beginning. We've made it clear that we're willing to fight, but now we need to prove that we're fighting for the right reasons. What do you have in mind? Marcus asked. A new doctrine. Active protection for all member species, regardless of size or military capability. No more watching from the sidelines while our people are attacked.
She turned to Marcus.
I'm forming a new organization within the Federation military. Special response teams that can deploy rapidly to any crisis situation. Like what happened at Proxima Station, small, highly trained units that can hold ground until larger forces arrive. I want you to help organize and train them. Marcus blinked in surprise. Your Majesty, I'm retired. I'm 62 years old and my best fighting days are behind me. I'm not asking you to fight, Marcus. I'm asking you to teach others how to fight. How to hold impossible positions, how to protect civilians under fire, how to make 41 people stand against an army and win. The offer was tempting, Marcus had to admit. After 20 years of fixing generators and installing plumbing, the idea of training soldiers again held a certain appeal. But there were practical considerations. What about my colony? New Harmony needs engineers, not soldiers. The Federation will provide whatever technical support your colony requires. Consider it part of our commitment to protecting member worlds. Zylara smiled. Besides, this assignment wouldn't be permanent. A few years to establish the training protocols, select and prepare instructors. Then you could return to your quiet life if you choose. Marcus thought about Elena Rodriguez and Tommy Liu and all the others who had died at Proxima Station. They had fought and died believing that no one cared, that their sacrifice would be forgotten along with their names. If I do this, he said finally, I want full authority to select personnel and set training standards. No political interference, no quota systems based on species representation. Granted. And I want the first class to include humans. Lots of them. My people have been learning how to fight outnumbered and outgunned for decades. It's time to share that knowledge with the rest of the galaxy. Also granted, Zalara extended her hand. Do we have an agreement, General Chen?
Marcus paused. General, the position comes with appropriate rank and authority. You'll need both if you're going to whip the Federation military into shape.
Marcus took her hand, feeling the strange connection that came from sharing blood with someone. We have an agreement, Your Majesty, but I'm keeping the title Staff Sergeant. I earned it the hard way. As they shook hands, Marcus realized that his quiet retirement was officially over. But for the first time in 20 years, he felt like he was exactly where he needed to be. 6 months later, Marcus Chen stood on the observation deck of the Federation training facility on Kepler 438b, watching the first graduating class of the Rapid Response Corps run their final exercise. Below him, teams of mixed-species soldiers moved through a mock colony under attack, coordinating their actions with a precision that would have made his old drill sergeants proud. The scenario was based on Proxima Station, naturally. 41 defenders, minimal weapons, 3 days to hold until reinforcement arrived. The difference was that these defenders had the benefit of proper training, better equipment, and most importantly, the knowledge that help was coming. Squad 7, you're leaving your eastern flank exposed, Marcus called over the comm system. Rodriguez, shift 2 of your people to cover that corridor. The Vexian squad leader, who had chosen to take the name of Marcus's old friend from Proxima Station, immediately repositioned her insectoid soldiers. It was a tribute that still brought a lump to Marcus's throat, even after 6 months of training together. How are they doing? Empress Zalara asked, joining him on the observation deck. Marcus glanced at the tactical display. Better than I expected. 6 months ago, most of these species had never worked together. Now they're moving like a single unit. Even the humans and Zilithians, especially the humans and Zilithians. Turns out we have more in common than anyone thought. Both species produce soldiers who'll die before they give up ground. Below them, the exercise reached its climax. As the attacking force made their final push, the defenders held their positions with grim determination, each species contributing their unique strengths to the collective defense. Altarian shields protected Vexian gunners, while human engineers created choke points that Zilithian warriors could defend more effectively. Exercise complete, the simulation announced. Defenders successful. Casualty rate 12%. Objective held for required duration. Marcus nodded with satisfaction. 12% casualties was tragic in real life, but for this scenario, it was remarkable. The original Proxima Station had lost 70% of its defenders. General Chen, called Lieutenant Torres, one of the human training instructors. The graduation ceremony is ready when you are. Marcus still wasn't comfortable with the rank, but he'd learned to accept it as a necessary tool. The Federation military needed to know that someone with real authority was behind the changes they were implementing. The graduation ceremony took place in the main training hall. With representatives from dozens of member species in attendance, the graduates stood in perfect formation, their mixed species squads a visible symbol of the Federation's commitment to collective defense. 6 months ago, Marcus began looking out at the assembled soldiers. Most of you had never worked with someone from another species. You spoke different languages, followed different tactical doctrines, and had different ideas about what it meant to be a soldier. He paused, letting his gaze move across the faces in front of him. Human, Zilithian, Vexian, Altarian, and a dozen other species all wearing the same uniform and the same expression of pride. Today you graduate as members of the Rapid Response Corps, the finest multi-species military unit in the galaxy. You are living proof that the Federation's strength comes not from any single species, but from our ability to stand together when it matters most. The applause was thunderous, coming not just from the graduates but from the observers who represented every major power in the Federation. Marcus could see Empress Zalara in the front row, smiling with genuine pride at what they had accomplished. Your first assignments await, Marcus continued. Some of you will be stationed at remote outposts. Others will serve aboard rapid deployment vessels. All of you will carry the responsibility of proving that the Federation keeps its promises to protect those who cannot protect themselves. After the ceremony, Marcus found himself in the officers' lounge with Zylar and several other high-ranking officials. The mood was celebratory, but Marcus could see the underlying tension in their faces. The galaxy was still a dangerous place, and the Rapid Response Corps would face its first real test soon enough. Intelligence reports suggest that hegemony activity is increasing in the Outer Rim, Commander Thane said, consulting his datapad. 3 more sleeper cells have been discovered, and there are rumors of a major operation being planned. What kind of operation? Zylar asked. Unknown. but the pattern suggests they're targeting civilian populations, possibly another plague attack or conventional terrorism designed to destabilize Federation member worlds.
Marcus felt his jaw tighten.
The hegemony had never forgiven the Federation for ending their dreams of galactic conquest, and they were always looking for ways to reignite the chaos they thrived in. "What's our response capability?" he asked. 12 rapid response teams fully operational, with 4 more completing final training. We can deploy to any crisis within 48 hours with larger forces following as needed. That's assuming we know where the crisis is going to be, Marcus pointed out. The hegemony's strength has always been their ability to strike without warning, which is why I'm implementing the next phase of the defense reforms. We're establishing monitoring stations throughout Federation space, with early warning systems that can detect unusual activity or communications patterns. "A surveillance network?" Marcus asked, uncomfortable with the implications. "A protection network. We're not interested in monitoring normal communications or activities. But if someone is planning an attack on civilian populations, we need to know about it in time to respond." It was a reasonable precaution, Marcus knew, but it still made him uneasy. The line between protection and oppression could be a thin one, and history was full of governments that had crossed it with the best of intentions. Before he could voice his concerns, an urgent signal came through the communication system. Commander Thon answered it immediately, his expression growing more serious as he listened to the report. "What is it?" Xylara asked. "Colony ship Aurora has gone missing in the Centauri sector. 2,000 civilians, including 500 families relocating from Earth." Marcus felt ice form in his stomach. Hegemony. Unknown, but the timing is suspicious. The Aurora was supposed to arrive at New Geneva Colony 3 days ago. No distress signal, no communication of any kind.
Search and rescue operations?
It could take weeks to search every possible location. Xylara stood up, her expression hardening with determination. "General Chen, I want your best rapid response team prepared for immediate deployment. If the Aurora has been captured by hostile forces, we're going to need soldiers who can handle a rescue operation." "Understood. I'll take Alpha Team myself." "General, you're not field-rated for combat operations anymore." Marcus smiled grimly. "Your Majesty, with respect, I've been training these soldiers for 6 months. If they're good enough to trust with a rescue mission, they're good enough to follow into combat." 3 hours later, Marcus found himself aboard the Federation cruiser Defiant, heading for the Centauri sector with Alpha Team. The squad consisted of 12 specialists from 6 different species, all volunteers who had requested the most dangerous assignments available. Sergeant Rodriguez, the Vexian squad leader, briefed them on what little intelligence they had. Aurora was carrying advanced terraforming equipment along with the colonists. If the hegemony has captured them, they could be planning to use the civilians as hostages while they steal the technology. Or worse, added Corporal Kim, one of the human members of the team. The terraforming equipment could be modified into biological weapons, turn a planet's atmosphere against its own population. Marcus studied the tactical display showing the search pattern. "What's our primary objective?" Rodriguez replied immediately. "Secondary objective is to secure or destroy the terraforming equipment if it's been compromised. Rules of engagement, full authorization for any force necessary to protect innocent lives." It took them 18 hours to reach the search area, where they joined a small fleet of Federation vessels combing the empty space between star systems. The Centauri sector was a notorious hiding place for pirates and smugglers, full of asteroid fields and rogue planets that could conceal entire fleets. "Contact," the Defiant sensor officer announced. "Large vessel, dead in space, bearing 27 Mark IV. On the main screen, the Aurora appeared as a dark silhouette against the stars. The colony ship was intact, but showing no signs of power or life support activity. Worse, there were 3 smaller vessels attached to her hull like parasites feeding on a host. "Hegemony interceptors," Commander Thane identified. "Design matches intelligence reports from the outer rim." "Life signs?" Marcus asked, detecting approximately 2,000 humanoid life signs aboard the Aurora. "They appear to be confined to the lower decks." Quote, "And the hegemony forces?" "Unknown. Their ships are shielded against our sensors." Marcus turned to his team. "Standard boarding operation. Rodriguez, take half the squad and secure the colonists. Kim, you're with me. We're going after the terraforming equipment." The boarding operation went smoothly with the Federation forces breaching the Aurora's hull through maintenance airlocks. Inside, the ship was dark and cold, with only emergency lighting to guide them through familiar corridors that now felt hostile and alien. They found the colonists huddled in the cargo bays, guarded by hegemony soldiers who seemed more interested in watching the terraforming equipment than their prisoners. The rescue proceeded quickly. with the alien guards overwhelmed by superior numbers and better training. But the terraforming equipment was already gone. They've stripped everything useful, Kim reported as they searched the empty laboratory spaces. Atmospheric processors, genetic sequencers, planetary engineering systems, all of it. Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's cold atmosphere. They're not just stealing the technology, they're planning to use it. But where? Rodriguez asked. It would take months to modify terraforming equipment for weapons use, and they'd need a planet-side facility to do the work. The answer came from an unexpected source. One of the rescued colonists, a terraforming engineer named Dr.
Sarah Walsh approached Marcus with a grim expression. General, there's something you need to know.
The hegemony soldiers didn't just take the equipment. They took 3 of my best technicians as well. Hostages? No, sir. They specifically selected the 3 people who know the most about rapid atmospheric modification. If they're planning to weaponize terraforming technology, those 3 could help them do it in weeks instead of months. Marcus activated his comm unit. Commander Thane, we have a problem. The hegemony didn't just steal equipment, they stole the knowledge to use it quickly. Understood, General. What are your recommendations? Marcus looked around at the empty ship that had once carried so much hope for a new colony, now violated and stripped bare by those who would use its gifts as weapons. We need to find those missing technicians before the hegemony can complete whatever they're planning. And we need to prepare for the possibility that they've already started. The rescue of the Aurora's colonists was hailed as a success throughout Federation space, but Marcus knew it was only the beginning. The hegemony had shown their hand, revealing a plan that could threaten every inhabited world in the galaxy. Terraforming technology, designed to create new homes for expanding populations, could be turned into the ultimate weapon of mass destruction. But as he watched the rescued families being evacuated to safety, Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced in months. The familiar fire of righteous anger. The hegemony had made the same mistake that so many of humanity's enemies had made before them. They had assumed that causing pain would make their opponents weak. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Back aboard the Defiant, Marcus gathered his team for a briefing on their next mission. The rescue had been successful, but the real work was just beginning. The hegemony has 3 Federation citizens and enough terraforming equipment to turn any planet into a tomb, he told them. Our job is to find them and stop them before they can use either one.
How do we track them?
Corporal Kim asked. They could be anywhere in the galaxy by now. We think like them, Marcus replied. They need a planet with the right atmospheric composition to test their weapons. They need a facility that can support the modification work. And they need to be somewhere the Federation won't think to look. Sergeant Rodriguez's compound eyes glittered with understanding. The dead worlds. Planets that were sterilized during the sector wars.
Exactly. No one goes there anymore, but some of them still have intact facilities from before the wars.
It's the perfect place to set up a weapons program. Over the next several hours, they worked with Federation intelligence to identify possible locations. The galaxy was full of dead worlds, planets that had been caught in the crossfire of ancient conflicts and left uninhabitable. Most were avoided by all sentient species, making them ideal hiding places for those who preferred to work in secret. We've identified 12 possibilities, Commander Thon reported. All dead worlds with intact research facilities, all within range of the hegemony ship's last known position. How long to check them all? With the current search pattern, approximately 6 weeks. Marcus shook his head. Too long. If they're planning to use terraforming technology as a weapon, they won't need that much time to prepare. What do you suggest? Marcus studied the star charts, looking for patterns that might narrow down their search. Then he saw it, a cluster of dead worlds in the Rigel sector, all within a few light years of each other. Rigel 7, he said quietly. General, Rigel 7, that's where they are. Marcus pointed to the system that held so many bad memories. It's a dead world with intact facilities. It's isolated from Federation patrol routes. And, he paused, remembering, and it's where I first encountered the hegemony 20 years ago. You think they chose it deliberately? I think they chose it because they know I'll come after them. This isn't just about stealing terraforming equipment. It's personal. Empress Xylara's voice came through the communication system. General Chen, are you certain about this assessment? Marcus looked at the tactical display showing the dead system where so many of his friends had died. As certain as I can be, Your Majesty. The hegemony has always been about psychological warfare as much as actual combat. They want me to know where they are. Then we'll give them what they want. The Third Fleet is moving to support your operation. Whatever they're planning on Rigel 7, we're going to stop it. As the Defiant changed course for the Rigel system, Marcus found himself thinking about the circular nature of his life. 20 years ago, he'd been a young soldier fighting for survival on Rigel 7. Now he was returning as a general, leading a multi-species force to stop the same enemies who had tried to kill him all those years ago. The difference was that this time he wasn't fighting alone. The Federation had finally learned to stand together, to protect its people regardless of their species or the color of their blood. It had taken the near death of an Empress and the sacrifice of one old soldier's immunity to make it happen. But the galaxy was finally beginning to live up to its promises. Marcus looked out at the stars streaming past as the ship jumped to hyperspace, carrying them toward whatever final confrontation awaited on the dead world of Rigel 7. Whatever happened there, he knew that the Federation would face it together. And sometimes, that made all the difference between victory and defeat, between hope and despair, between a galaxy united and a galaxy consumed by its own fears. The blood of a human veteran had saved an alien Empress. Now it was time to see if the courage of all species standing together could save the galaxy itself.